Hey everyone, it's Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to Herb Rally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey, no matter what stage you're at. We have over 700 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes, and you're bound to find something of interest. Today's episode is yet another edition of the Herbalist Hour, and I'm joined by Ash Ritter. And I met Ash many years ago at the Good Medicine Confluence, so it was nice to catch up with her a bit. So Ash is a West Coast-born, desert-dwelling ethnobotanist, educator, writer, multi-disciplinary animist, and a poet in disguise as herbalist. For 20 years and counting, Ash continues to reverently devote her life to fungal and botanical studies, encompassing traditional, academic, clinical, and directly relational terrains. You can learn more about her and her work at blacksagebotanicals.org. In this episode, we discuss the Solanaceae plant family, her herbal origins, what a psychonaut is, making herbal candy, and a whole lot more. Everything in this podcast episode is strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. So just keep that in mind. Huge thank you to Ash for joining me on the show. Hope to have her back on as I got through about half of my questions. So Ash is just a super entertaining and fun person. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. If you enjoy the Herb Rally podcast, please consider leaving us some sort of written review in your podcast player of choice. So if you listen to Apple Podcasts, if you have a moment, please leave us a written review of some sort. I read every single one, and it always brings a smile to my face. Also, before we get into the show, I want to tell you about the upcoming Flower Essences course brought to you by the Florida School of Holistic Living. And the course is with Emily Ruff. So that's a 5-part series where you cultivate a deeper awareness of flower essences and how to use them to support your emotional well-being, find balance, and create calm in your daily life. You'll explore the history of these remedies. You'll study the core 38 essences in depth. It teaches you how to make and formulate and provides practical assessment tools for understanding their application. So whether you're a practitioner or simply seeking self-care, this course empowers you with the tools for emotional wellness for a lifetime. So if you'd like to learn more about the Florida School of Holistic Living's Flower Essence course, starts in October. In mid-October 2023, I will leave a link at the top of today's podcast show notes. Or I'll read the URL here as well. It's holisticlivingschool.org/flower-essences. But yeah, it's easier just to click on the link in the podcast show notes. Also, before we get into the show, I want to tell you about Nativa Medica's upcoming training. It's called Plant Spirit Psychopomp. So in this rare offering of Plant Spirit Psychopomp, you will explore plants, trees, and land and practices from around the world and enter into experiential work together. You'll learn how to do this middle work and maintain personal sovereignty by being in relationship with key plants and trees. You'll discover plants that can be helpful during the death process. You'll connect with the powerful networks of plant, tree, and land psychopomps who already know how to aid beings in transition, and a whole lot more. So this 3-day live video training is for practitioners, healthcare professionals, psychologists, hospice workers, death midwives, and death doulas who want to expand their training into after-death care. And you need to have previous basic training in how to work with clients. So you could go to nativamedica.com/plant-spirit-psychopomp. But of course, again, it's easier just to click on the link in the show notes. And Nativa Medica, your instructor is Gene Schneider. Also, one other thing to note, this training is limited to 20 participants. So if this sounds interesting, definitely learn more about it now. Registration deadline is November 1st, 2023. So again, that's the Plant Spirit Psychopomp. And last but not least, before we get into the show, I want to tell you that the first 2 lessons of the Vitalist Herbalism mini course are both live. So lesson 1 is allopathic versus Vitalist Herbalism, and lesson 2 is the Holistic Intake Roadmap. And this mini course is free, and it's brought to you by the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and it's only available for a limited time. So depending on when you're listening to this, lesson 3 might even be open as well. So if you want to learn more about the Vitalist Herbalism mini course brought to you by the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, it's a free course available for a limited time. If you'd like to learn more and register, click on the link in the podcast show notes. Alrighty, think that's going to do it for me today. Hope y'all are doing really well. Amanda and I are going to head out and go to the farmer's market now. So I think it's one of the last ones of the season, actually, here in Appleton. But all right, y'all. Talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm honored to have on Ash Ritter. Welcome to the show, Ash.
Thank you, my friend.
It's great to see you. And let's kick things off and learn a little bit about your past. How did you get into this whole herbalism thing?
I mean, that's always a hard thing to answer. Let me sip some tea to properly answer.
I'll join you.
Yes. I mean, first and foremost, I grew up in a tiny little beach community in Southern California. So I was always surrounded by these larger elemental forces than just sort of the human boxed in suburbia. And I remember as a child just always eating oxalis, always eating sour grass, and I learned it from nobody. I literally just had this inclination and this instinct and this drive to chomp it. And I remember I'd show my little sisters, I'm like, yeah, let's eat this plant, and we loved the sourness and the juiciness and that almost fluorescent yellow flower. So I feel like in many ways it started there.
Yeah.
Just allowing myself to eat weeds.
I love it.
But also too, I mean, we would, walk to the beach and find the huge bullwhip kelps and try and get each other with kelp. And so how did I get into herbalism? I mean, it's always been there. And I consciously started studying it when I was around 16 years old.
Wow.
Yep. And the study started as a psychonaut, and I was interested primarily in rites of passage and initiation and how plants and fungi have been part of that all over the world in so many different ways and flavors and flares. So I dove deep pretty fast. I spent a lot of time at bookstores as my happy place when I was a teenager. So it started that way and ended up segueing into studying ethnobotany in college, so anthropology and botany. And then from there, I said, no, academia. I want to study directly from people who have a story and a lineage. And honestly, by a mystical, not me efforting, the teachers came. So pretty much my study after departing from academia was one-on-one apprenticeships completely for many years.
Yeah. I have a story with oxalis as well. We have a species that grows in the West Cascades in Oregon, and I can't remember the species name for some reason right now, but my friend is like from inner city Baltimore, and he came and visited me a few years ago, and we went to the Brighton Bush it was the Cougar Hot Springs. And I showed him that you could eat some oxalis, and he was already kind of stunned by the beauty of Oregon. And then after eating oxalis, he was like, oh my goodness, what is this? This is amazing. I think I turned him into a hippie right there on the spot. But I kind of want to stick on the psychonaut theme. Can you explain what a psychonaut is?
I will try. Well, my experience, my interpretation is this deep curiosity to explore the vastness of consciousness. And that's not limited to human consciousness alone, but this deep curiosity to dive into, to swim amongst, to explore with courage what may seem like great mysteries to some. So oftentimes I think when people use that terminology, they're referring to certain compounds or certain plants or certain fungi that they choose to ingest. However, for me, it's just a natural state of being. I'm like, I don't know why I was born this way. Just this deep curiosity for the unknown and being willing to go out there and explore. So that's a hard thing to answer, I suppose.
Okay, so it's not just taking psychedelic mushrooms, in other words.
No.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I don't know why I went there. I thought that's maybe what you were implying. I might ask you about
Well,
Amanita
I am
muscaria
implying
later,
that
but
too.
okay. All right, fair enough.
I
Well,
am implying that too, but it's a deeper and grander answer than
I love that.
just chomp and stuff. Yeah.
I love that. Very, very good. Well, yeah, let's stick in your past for a little bit. Who have been some of your herbal mentors?
Oh my gosh. Well, first I want to thank Professor John Baker. So when I was in school, so I dropped out of high school early, but by happenstance happened to find out about this program. It was called a middle college program where I could do a high school completion program for 3 days a week, and then I could go directly into community college and take whatever I wanted. And the first two classes I signed up for were history of jazz and anthropology of magic, witchcraft, and religion. Just because it sounded cool,
That does.
And I get into the class. I've told this story before, but I get into the class and I'm sort of shy, tucked in the corner, reading this book that I happened to find at a metaphysical bookstore called Hallucinogens and Shamanism. Has like an unmistakable bright orange, kind of neonish cover. And the teacher walks up to me on the first day. Teacher walks up to me and he goes, "What are you reading?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm about to get in really big trouble." He says, "Come talk to me after class." It turns out that he was a big part of the Society for the Anthropology of Consciousness and had a deep interest in entheogenic plants, specifically Datura. And I don't know. So he was a first mentor, John Baker. He really took me under his wing and would like slip me books here and there, just gift me the books, invited me to these anthropology conferences, and showed me that this wasn't just something that people were curious about in dead show parking lots. This is something that we could study, at least at the time, study with, respect and some sort of sense of credibility in a time where it seemed like anyone that was into that was wearing a tinfoil hat. However, there's complexity with the credibility talk in academia. So John Baker, shout out Professor John Baker in Southern California. Huge shout out to Dr. Kenneth Profrock. He's a naturopath doctor. He's a wizard in disguise as a naturopath doctor.
Well, he's got a giant wizard beard, so I don't know how much of a disguise it is.
He has a fantastic beard.
He does. Jelly.
But again, I mean, one of my mentors, I had the privilege of shadowing him in his office, in his clinical practice for 2 years. And it blew my mind. I felt like a fish out of water, my friend. But he saw me at the Good Medicine Confluence years and years ago, many years ago. And it was actually his sweetheart, his partner, who was like, "Hey, I like the questions you asked in class. Like, come down and let me introduce you to Dr. P." And I was like, no, he's being crowded by a bunch of people. I don't want to impose. Yeah. I was, again, very shy. I don't want to impose. She takes me down and she says, "Kenneth, this is Ash. She wants to apprentice with you. When can she start?"
That's awesome.
He's like, "Nice to meet you, Ash. How about September?" So he has played a major role in my life for so many reasons, but really in his finesse with being able to be so multidisciplinary, so thoughtful, always have a sense of humor in the most challenging of contexts. He has some pretty heavy client cases. An amazing person. I've had many amazing mentors, but those are two I think I'll shout out today.
For sure.
Yeah.
When you were asking those questions in the audience at the Good Medicine Confluence, did you already have quite a bit of like years of experience in herbalism, or where were these questions coming from for you?
Yeah. So I've always been I have my chunks, right? Like I have the academia chunk. I'm a big bookworm. I love scanning, for data on PubMed and all these things, but I'm also a gnome, one that loves gnosis, one that loves experimenting and exploring and direct experience. So sort of both of those rivers came together in my life, over time. And then also the river of literally just happening to live in the city in San Francisco at the time and being the first at so many different accidents that I saw on the street. And at a certain point being like, maybe I should just learn some practical street herbalism and medic stuff. And so all of those kind of came in. So yeah, I had a background, and the questions I was asking, I thought were very dry and nerdy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with a funny top secret that I finally revealed to him years later is I have a deep interest in the history of flying ointments, which are like entheogenic, possibly psychoactive, balms that are actually common all over the world, but are often associated with, like, quote unquote, the witches of Europe, European psychedelics, right? So I've always been interested in the topical application of psychoactive herbs. And at one point he was teaching a class about herbs for pain management. And I just said, have you ever made any shelf-stable gels? Shelf-stable herbal gels. But I didn't admit I was asking about psychoactive lubes. So that's like a funny story, but yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if you picked up on that.
I told him this year, actually.
Oh, okay.
He had no idea.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. So you've lived in quite a few different locations, but I think of you as like a desert dweller. Can you kind of explain the ecosystem that you're currently in? Maybe some of the plants around you?
Yes. So I live in the Sonoran Desert. So I'm in southeastern Arizona, and I've been here for 7 years now, but I've always loved the desert. My grandparents on my father's side, my Nana and Pop, lived in the desert for quite some time in Southern California, and it always took me and captured my heart. So the Sonoran Desert is a subtropical desert. I think that when most people conjure the image of the desert in their mind, it's very bleak and crispy critter and void of life. And that's completely not the case here. In my experience, and especially living in it, it's quite the opposite. Especially right now, we have this little window of humidity during monsoon season, which is like, July, August, creeping into September a wee bit. And the winds and the rains and the thunder and the humidity come up from Mexico. So all of the cacti right now are just like plump with water. So we have, the iconic cactus that has its own emoji is the saguaro cactus, Carnegie gigantea. Crazy story behind its Latin name, named after Andrew Carnegie. But
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never knew that.
Well, it was changed. The name was changed because the story I was told is that certain botanists were trying to garner like philanthropic funds from Carnegie. So they changed the Latin name of saguaro to Carnegie.
Wow.
And then one version of the story I was told was that they never got the donation, but the name stuck, So that's the thing about plant names, eh?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have the iconic saguaro cacti out here. We have Larea tridentata. Some people know it as creosote or chaparral. That is the smell of desert rain. When it rains, the huge amount of volatile compounds in this plant just permeate the entire landscape, and it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal, curious, beautiful plant. I think it's something like 200, plus interesting chemical compounds, over 60 volatile compounds. It has almost like a resinous nature. It's its own sunscreen that it's creating. That's its survival strategy.
Wow.
So most plants out here have thorns, but the chaparral is different in that it doesn't need thorns because it's taking up space with its smell, and that resinous, nature that it has protects it from the blazing sun. A fantastic plant.
Is the saguaro cactus also psychedelic in nature? I feel like I've heard that before, but then I've also heard the opposite.
It's an urban legend, and there's nuance to this one. So if you look at the chemical constituents, there is a compound called, I believe it's called carnagine. Yeah,
after
right.
Andrew Carnegie.
There he is again. There he is again.
That's funny.
And it's one of these weird things where scientists injected it into mice, mice brains, and they were high off of it. Now, where on planet Earth would anyone be injecting plant compounds into their brains? I don't know. It also, all Cactaceae have phenylethylamine, which we usually associate with chocolate. That's kind of this like amphetamine-like compound that makes you feel giddy. It's the same thing we release when we have like butterflies when we're first meeting a cutie that we like.
Really?
Yeah. So all cacti have phenylethylamine in it, and to a certain extent, that's going to impact our mood. However, all of that to say, interesting chemistry in saguaro cactus. But the native people here, the Autumn people, consider the saguaros their ancestors incarnate. And I don't feel that it would ever, ever, ever be appropriate to ingest the flesh of its body. So that's my opinion. That's my feeling. I don't, and there's no ethnobotanical data. There's no history, at least out loud, of people eating it. So because of that, I feel like it's sort of off limits in my book,
Yeah. My teacher, Howie Brownstein, would call that a no pick.
Right.
So yeah, I like it. Thanks for clarifying that. I've never heard it put that way. So is there anything else you wanted to say about it, or?
Well, there are the saguaro cactus fruits.
Okay.
And that there's an absolute history and reverence of the fruits, not just for humans, but for literally the entire ecosystem thrives off of what I perceive of and what I see as the world tree of the desert. Like life rallies around this cactus. So when it flowers, it's pollinated by bats and moths in the night. Super cool. It's this like huge, glorious white flower, a sort of datura-esque in its like signature, in its shapeage. And then when the fruits come, they are the bastion. They are kind of that signal and sign like, hey, rain's going to come soon. Everyone get ready. And it's right at that peak of the hottest, driest time of year where all the creatures, humans, birds, javelinas, bobcats, deer, they're all like, where's the food? Where's the water? Yeah. And so the fruit, and it's this massive celebration. It's New Year's in so many ways. And so that is a delicious fruit. And definitely has a context and a history for being eaten and well loved by all.
I've never had it. I don't think I've ever seen a flowering saguaro. I'd love to see one though.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to send you a picture.
Okay, maybe I'll splice it onto the YouTube video if you don't mind.
Please, yeah,
all right.
It's glorious.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Can you speak to Opuntia a little bit?
Yeah, so Opuntia, sometimes people call it prickly pear fruit, comes from this cactus. Sometimes people know it as nopal or nopales. Prickly pear cactus, Opuntia, it's a species that's now found worldwide. Though it's been said that all cacti originate from the Americas, probably South America, So that's cool to think about, because a lot of the plants here, I think a lot of the medicinal plants are, in America, it's this melting pot. It came from the Spaniards, it came from the Moors, it came from here, it came from there. But Cactaceae is American, and I'm including South America in this. So Opuntia, prickly pear cactus, to me is like the ultimate apocalypse food. I mean, it grows with minimal water, right? You can plant cuttings of it and it will thrive. That's one of its survival strategies, is if it drops one of its paddles, it will regrow, as a whole new cactus right there. The pads themselves are edible, although as they get older, they become more fibrous and it's not as fun. The pads themselves are edible. So yeah, a lot of people would know that as nopales. An amazing mucilage.
Yeah.
Amazing slime factor. But it's interesting too because it's hydrophilic, right? So it wants to draw water into its body. You know what I mean? That's how cacti, that's why it's drawing for us. What I mean by that is, if we were to eat nopal, to eat Opuntia cactus, the paddles, there's that initial mucilaginous, nice slime coating the mucosa, but then that slime also wants to draw in water. So by doing that, it's drawing and kind of pulling things through the digestive tract and then helping you release them. So kind of a nice wiggle waggle dance that it does as it moves through the GI tract. And it has all this insoluble fiber. So like most slimy stuff does, it slows the uptake of sugars into the bloodstream. So an amazing blood sugar balancer, or will drop blood sugar because of that. So a fantastic for so many reasons. And that's just ingesting it. I mean, topically too, out here where I live, we have like all kinds of venomous critters. So topically, using the fillet or like the inner pad sliminess of the nopal, of the Opuntia, will draw out, venoms from rattlesnakes or scorpion stings, or even just sunburn. It wants to draw out that heat, if you will.
Totally. So would herbalists consider it both an astringent and a demulcent at the same time then?
That's the interesting thing. I don't know if I'd go as far as astringent, but I'm sure there's a better technical term for it. But it does have that sort of like, here's a technical term, maybe like adsorbs.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like similarly
Absorbent.
to what we'd think of like clays or activated charcoal stuff. Like,
good comparison.
Yeah, sucks up the things that you don't want in there and then helps you poo them out. But it does so in a sort of delicate, not too drying manner.
So when you go like to the quote unquote Mexican section of a grocery department and you see the nopales, that's what we're talking about here.
That's what we're talking about here. So yeah, you can get them all niced up with all the glaucids, the little hairs removed, Yeah. Usually it's the young pads, which are nice and tender. I think sometimes I've heard people compare them to kind of green bean texture, more or less. And then of course there are the fruits, which are popping off right now. The prickly pear fruit. Sometimes people call them tunas, tuna fruit, sabra. There's many, many names all over the world for the prickly pear fruit. But right now here, it's fluorescent fuchsia. It's gorgeous. I'm actually doing a culinary experiment the last few days, 2 experiments with prickly pear fruits. One amazing and one experiment not going so great.
Well, this is how we learn. I haven't plugged your herbal business yet. It's called Black Sage Botanicals. So I do want to talk about your candy for sure, but okay. Do you use a lot of these desert plants in the medicine you make and sell then?
Yes. So I make an herbal candy. I have a herbal candy of the month club. I think
That's so cool.
3 or 4 years now. The story is that it started because I was teaching herbal cooking classes for quite some time at Tucson Herb Store. Shout out Tucson Herb Store. It's a little apothecary we have downtown. And
nice.
So I was teaching herbal cooking classes, and at a certain point, people were like, "Can we buy this? Can we buy?" I did a herbal ice cream sundae class and made like a peach leaf caramel, and people flipped their lid. People flipped their
Wow.
lid, like, "Can we buy this?" I said, "I guess you could buy it, sure."
Yeah.
And it just, long story short, it snowballed. So yeah, every month, I create a completely different candy recipe, and I always am trying to reflect what I'm seeing where I am, and utilize, if not utilize, some sort of beautiful fruit or leaf or flower or root that is growing on the land where I live, to make it a poem about the time, about the season, about the feelings that come with the season. So it's secretly like a conceptual art project, but it's also edible.
So it's monthly. Does that mean someone could actually subscribe to it and just have it on auto pay? Is it more of like they pick and choose which ones they want as they go?
Well, thanks for plugging it.
Of course.
That's nice.
And dear listener, I'll leave a link to that in the show notes as well, so you could just click on it and go right to the page. But sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's I'm feeling like what's the word? I'm blushing a little bit. Because I'm not good I'm not good at marketing, you know what I mean? Herbalist downfall.
Yeah.
I am good at math, though. I am one of those herbalists that's good at math.
That's really cool. Howie Brownstein's a great mathematician too.
Hey.
Yeah, shout out to your herbalist mathematicians.
There are some of us that do like math. So yes, I have two options for the Herbal Candy Club. I have a Patreon page, which actually has candy plus a ton of other stuff. I do monthly live streams. I do a lot of writing. I drop a bunch of free classes and videos about plants on there, all kinds of stuff. But that's where people can sign up and have a long-term subscription for Candy Club.
That's cool.
But I also do sort of a small amount of a la carte on my website. So every month I'll just have a flavor drop and I'll say, okay, this month I only have 10 extras or 15 extras max, and I'll put them on the website until they're gone. So those are the two paths one could take towards candy.
And then if you don't sell the rest, then you just get to eat them all.
I've been selling out for a couple years in a row.
That's awesome. Congrats. I've never heard of such a product before. I think that's so unique and cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, it really, it was really in, the end of 2019, 2020, where the world was changing rapidly, very rapidly. And it started as this passion project. Besides people asking for it from the cooking classes, it started as this passion project of, can we still have a little bit of sweetness in our lives? Can I just mail people something that'll keep them happy through challenging time, whatever people were perceiving and experiencing, in 2020? It's like, how can I bring a little bit of joy, a little bit of lightheartedness, maybe even some sweetness, literal and metaphorical, and
it's medicinal too,
and secretly medicinal. And that's the thing, right? And I learned this from my grandma, is if you can make something delicious, people will go for it, and not everyone likes the crazy tasting tinctures. Not everyone wants to drink these really intense, bitter teas. But if I can sneak with consent, sneak a bunch of herbs or medicinal mushrooms in a candy, and it's delicious. And then I make, I should have one out, but I make hand-drawn zines with the candy every month. So it's a little pamphlet that comes that says, like, by the way, Trametes versicolor turkey tail is also really, really fantastic antiviral. And did you know it's a saprophytic fungi? That means it breaks down logs and builds soil. How cool is that? So as it tastes good, people are more receptive to learning. I'd like to think to learning about what's actually going on here. Wait, what am I eating? Wait, I could do this all the time and it would benefit me and my family. Like, so I snuck it right in, getting people excited about plants and stuff.
Yeah, what a unique offering. And then, yeah, to throw in the zine as well. Are your customers that are buying the candy, are these like super hardcore herb nerds, or are they kind of just like your standard, like health conscious type person as well?
It's totally both.
That's cool.
It's both, and it's really fun to see who comes in and from where and why. So I think the herb nerds appreciate it off, right out the gate. But there are other people and they're like, my friend gave me one of these, or my daughter gave me one of these, and I tried it, and I think it would be great for my husband who needs this but refuses to drink tea. And so yeah, it comes from a lot of different sort of ponds, if you will, and it's really fun for me to witness.
Yeah, I'm sure candy increases compliance big time.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, dear listener, I will include links to all of Black Sage Botanicals offerings, along with the candy and whatnot. So I do want to transition a little bit, Ash.
Let's.
So I've got a mystery question. So I have two guest questions. One's a mystery question, and I was told that you should try to guess who it was that asked it. So let's see how this goes. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Okay. So here we go. Here's the by the way, it's from the same person.
Okay.
So the mystery question is, or if you could see, you could guess who it was that asked it. Does Ash believe that cocaine should be reintroduced into Coca-Cola?
Oh my Lord.
Do you know who asked that out of curiosity? I'll tell you.
Jesus Christ. Okay, do I believe? No, because that is like a super strong extract that I feel is not an authentic representation of the beautiful coca leaf. Now, do I think coca leaf would be appropriate in a soda? Heck yes, I do. I mean, I've heard it said that coca leaf is as mineral dense as like nettles.
Wow.
And when I was in Peru, I did try coca leaf tea many years ago, and I found it to be less stimulating than yerba mate.
Wow.
And I'm very sensitive to that. Like I'm not into that side of the fence, the stimulating stuff. I like the relaxing stuff. So, but I found coca leaf tea to be far less stimulating than mate, as an example. So yeah, I'd say a coca leaf in soda, sure, but I wouldn't go further than that. Whoever asked that silly person, oh my god.
I wonder if that's what he meant. If he meant to say coca leaf, but it says cocaine. Okay. This episode's all about drugs. So
well, and let us not forget what the great Dali quote, which is
Salvador.
Yeah.
Okay.
He said, or maybe this is a fake quote, but I do not do drugs. I am drugs. Think about it.
I love that.
I am. Oh my God. Dopamine, serotonin. Like, oh my God.
There's all sorts of, chemical reactions happening inside of us all the time. So
all the time.
So that was Charles Doc Garcia.
Chuck. Chuck. Okay. Also one of my dear mentors. Freaking Chuck. I should have known. Shout out Chuck, California School of Hispanic Herbalism.
I read in your bio that he was one of your teachers, and so I reached out to ask if he wanted to do any guest questions. So he sent me that first one, which was more of a joke, and then the second question is more on a serious note. So this is also from Charles Doc Garcia. Has Ash treated clients with mushrooms for depression or depressive anxiety?
Well, I technically can't treat anything because I'm an herbalist, right?
Good answer.
Which is almost why I went to medical school. I was interested in crossing that line, and that was part of my study with Dr. Profrock was do I want to go to medical school right now? I decided against that. So technically, according to the FDA, I cannot treat, cure, or fix anything, but I can tell you really interesting anecdotal things. So, right?
Yeah.
So have I treated? No. And let me be clear that there are an immense amount of fungi, mushrooms, many kinds of mushrooms, not just fruiting bodies, that we think of, the classic little guy, little stem and cap guy. But there's fungi literally in the bodies of many medicinal plants that we eat, that we ingest. We call those endophytes, right? There's fungi in the soil that grows our plants. There's fungi in our gut and on our skin. So in that sense, yes, mushrooms are profound, and I'm talking about all of them. Now, I know which one Chuck is referring to. He's probably referring to the psilocybe species. And what I can say is that I'm being very careful about this. I can't dispense any of that because of the strange gray zone that we're in as far as legality is concerned. But I do love sharing the ethnomycology, so the historical contexts and usage of not just psilocybe mushrooms, but the Amanita muscaria mushroom, another important entheogenic mushroom. And I share and teach a lot about the history and cultural context all over the world. And hopefully when I share that data, that people can come to their own conclusions about how those beings, how that technology can work for them. And then they get to decide how they want to implement that in their lives or not. So that's my very careful answer.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate you being conservative when responding. And this is a good moment to tell the listener that this is a show that doesn't give out medical advice ever in any sort of way, whether that's mental health or just standard medical advice. So do your own research and be safe. But yeah, thanks, Ash.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the reasons, honestly, why I actually love studying history. And as an ethnobotanist, we didn't have the term ethnomycology in my day. But as an ethnobotanist, so someone that studies history through the lens of plants and mushrooms, I find that to be just as important, if not, in my opinion, more important, perhaps, if I can say so, than a lot of the clinical data that comes out now. Sometimes the clinical data that we see about something like psilocybe mushrooms, there's a history for that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And people can say, well, yeah, duh, we knew, so I'm not poo-pooing, any sides. It's just a matter of, to me, it's like, if you and like Bob Marley says, if you know your history, you know where you're coming from. And so I quite like sharing history. And that's also a way for me to share about my love and the power and the potency of these plants and mushrooms, and doing it in a way that the bureaucratic system that we live in can accept.
Well, with the ever-expanding legalization of marijuana, cannabis, I'm hoping to see something similar for psilocybin. I think it may be just a matter of time. Hopefully, maybe that's overly optimistic, but I know psilocybin personally has helped me, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll stand with you. It's helped me too.
Yeah.
It helps me all the time. And I wouldn't be who I am. I would not be who I am without it, for so many reasons.
I could say exactly the same thing. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. Why don't we try a newish segment I've been trying. It's called Explain That Gram. And I stole it directly from a talk show on YouTube called Hot Ones, where the host has the guests eat progressively hotter and hotter chicken wings. But we're not going to do that part. Basically, what I'm just going to show you something from your Instagram, a picture from your Instagram, and then you could tell us like the broader story.
Okay.
So, and yeah, dear listener, if you're just listening to the audio, you can see the picture on YouTube, or I'll just leave a link to the picture in the show notes. And follow Ash on Instagram while you're at it.
Oh, thanks.
So, yeah. So we're gonna try this share screen thing here.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes.
So you actually already talked about this couple already. So I'm just kind of curious if you want to take us back to that moment in time and just share a little story about it.
Yes. So, okay, this year, I had the privilege of speaking at the Good Medicine Confluence. It's actually the first herbal conference I ever went to. Where are we in time? Over a decade ago, I suppose, at this point, or yeah, over a decade ago. And actually, Charles Garcia, took me there as his sidekick. So the backstory I'll tell really fast is Chuck took me as his sidekick to Good Medicine Confluence over a decade ago. This year was a full circle moment where I got to teach there. So this picture is Dr. Kenneth Profrock and his sweetheart, Darla. And what's really funny about this year is Dr. P and I didn't talk about what we were sharing. And as soon as the schedule came out, we saw that we were both talking about Solanaceae plants and tropane alkaloids. We our talks, of course, diverged into really different spirals, but it was really, really funny. So this is a really happy moment for me in just feeling this, coming out of my shell slowly but surely, and being able to speak on stage, speak on stage with somebody who I really love and admire. And just as much as I love and admire Dr. Profrock, I also love and admire Darla. She is an incredible, beautiful, ball of light human being. So that's that picture.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. And the Good Medicine Confluence just looked like an amazing event. I've been a couple times, but unfortunately I had to miss this year. So those full circle moments are just the best. So good job, Ash. That's so neat.
Thanks. That's where I first met you, my friend, also.
That makes sense. Yeah. I wonder which one it was. I know I went to the one outside of New Mexico, or outside of Albuquerque, but
was it the Cloudcroft one?
Yeah, it was the Cloudcroft one. Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Taking me back. All right. So here's the other one.
Have you hugged a cactus lately? So
yeah, I had to share this one. I'm like, that's intense, but yeah, let's hear it.
Well, and you know what's funny is this is a young cactus. This is a young saguaro comparatively. So see, it doesn't even have any of its side arms yet. So just a wee youngster. I mean, maybe 50, 60 years old compared to some of these 200-year-old, almost elephant looking fellows out here on the ranch where I live. But I think, I also utilized this photo as a pun about talking about phallic things and the bombs and broomstick class. But yeah, this is a young saguaro cactus out here. This is just basically my backyard. I live on a big old ranch, so what more? I could say so many things.
No, that's great. Yeah, I'm just so for the listener, Ash is hugging a pretty large saguaro cactus, but I'll leave a link to that one as well in the show notes. All right,
and
let's stop.
They do have thorns. They do have thorns, but if you were to zoom in, you'd see that I'm hugging not a huge bear hug.
Okay. Badass. Awesome. Well, pre-show, we were talking about maybe potential talking topics, and you said you might want to chat a bit about the nightshade family. Would you like to chat about the nightshade family?
Sure. So the nightshade family, Solanaceae, super duper fascinating to me. And of course, I have this deep curiosity for the sort of misunderstood plants and misunderstood mushrooms, misunderstood families. And Solanaceae nightshades are definitely one of them. To where, certain people in nutrition circles are like, oh, I can't eat nightshades, they're inflammatory, right? And then other people, they're like, this is my ancestral food. I eat chile and tomato and I eat eggplants all the time, every day, right? Out here, actually, this is, if we look at some of these nightshade family plants, they're some of the best growers in the desert, like chiltepin pepper, the OG original pepper, as an example. So nightshades are fascinating. I like their paradoxical nature, because even in the name, right, you have nightshades and then solanaceae, S-O-L, sun.
I never thought about that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All throughout, from plant to plant to plant to plant, there is this constant sort of like paradox, duality dance happening in the mythology and the stories. Super fascinating. So I love these edges. I love riding these edges. And that was what drew me into wanting to understand, this deeper question of what is toxin, what is tonic, what is poison, what is medicine, who gets to decide that, and why. And again, over the past few years, that's when I started coming out with my nightshade plant research over the past few years, is to start a bigger conversation of, by what authority do we decide is, something is named poison or medicine, and what are we going to do about that? How can we think bigger about that? And so yeah, solanaceae nightshade plants, so many of them have deep, long-standing traditions, not just as entheogenic or psychoactive plants, but also for very, very practical reasons, including culinary use and including pain management, actually, which is, if we think about, I forget the statistic, but it's something like in the United States, we use, a vast majority of the world's opiates. And it's like, well, do we have a vast majority of the world's pain? So thinking about plants and mushrooms for pain management is also just a really interesting practical aside. So yeah, we could go a million places with the nightshade, fam.
Is datura in the nightshade?
It
If I'm
sure
recalling
is.
correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
That's more on like the psychoactive side of things.
It is. However, it's an absolutely profound, respiratory herb as well. In fact, a lot of the nightshade plants, so including tobacco, right? Tobacco is a nightshade plant. So, in very small amounts has a profound effect on supporting the respiratory system, especially for people with asthmatic conditions. But, you take a little bit too much, burning it as a smoke, for example, inhaling it as a smoke, and it's going to change your state of consciousness. But
are you talking about datura or tobacco?
Both.
Both. Okay.
But yeah, datura.
Okay.
Datura is a fascinating plant. So I actually grew up in Ventura County, California, and we have a pictograph a cave painting, a bit north of where I grew up, but in the same county. That's called, I believe it's called like Pinwheel Cave, or, we named it that. We non-native people named it that, but it's a painting of a datura flower. And datura is a very, very, very important sacred plant for the Chumash people, which are the native people where I grew up. So yeah, a lot to do, in the sacred context with rites of passage, visioning, gathering data from the beyond and bringing it to the community. Interesting too, to think about certain balms were made. I believe it was like the Yaqui people. So that's like, just like the northwest tip of Mexico, making balms, flying ointment, to rub on the belly for visioning, things like this, but also for pain management. Datura is fascinating.
Well, if we could stick on just for a couple minutes, I don't know if you have any spiels about tobacco in general. I smoke an occasional cigar here and there, and I never really smoked before until like say this past year or two.
Yes.
And so I don't really know much about the plant other than I enjoy smoking the occasional cigar. So do you have any spiels about that tobacco?
Sure. I love tobacco. I don't smoke it at this point in my life, but I adore it as a being. And I find it so curious. Again, something that's been so absolutely vilified and yet is considered highly important and highly sacred for so many First Nations peoples. Henbane similarly worked with in Europe, which is a relative, smoked in similar ways that you see First Nations people in the States working with tobacco. Topically, it's a really, really, really amazing liniment, again, for pain management. Chuck, so calling in Chuck, Charles Garcia, he always said, one of the most important things to carry in your go bag, your like emergency apocalypse bag, is a pack of tobacco. He said, because you can use it topically for pain, make a poultice with it, but also there are going to be people that are really wanting their fix. And if you have some tobacco, that's going to be a real good barter item right there.
Good point.
But no, chemically speaking, I mean, there are many things we could talk about of its sacred and ceremonial nature, but chemically speaking, really, really fascinating. The whole, we have receptor sites in our body called nicotinic receptor sites. Arguably, we were built for this. We've co-evolved. We also have muscarinic receptor sites, right? So if we're talking about muscimol or muscarine from Amanita muscaria, so people always, I think, refer to their cannabinoid, endogenous cannabinoids and but I'm like, we got more.
Yeah, we got a lot.
We got a lot more than that.
Good point. Yeah.
The thing about nicotine and the nicotinic receptor sites is its relationship with choline, or the acetylcholine system. It's like that ability to focus, helping us honing in on a task and handling a task at hand. That has a lot to do with how we run acetylcholine through our brains and through our body. So nicotine is really, really exceptional at that. Guess what? So is caffeine. And that's like the famous pair, right? Like I can't start my day without my coffee and cigarette. Well, interesting to think that those are chemical compounds in there that help us focus really well. So I'm curious, I intend to teach a class about I've been writing a class about all this actually. But I'm fascinated by tobacco for so many reasons.
Well, when you do, you should reach out and let me know, especially if it's online. I would love to attend if I can.
Oh, heck yeah. I'd love to have you in space.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I feel like you taught a lot about plants today, giving the audience what they want. I love it. Well, why don't we end the show with just getting to know Ash a little bit better? I'm going to just ask you some kind of fun, random questions. So, Ash, besides herbalism, what is one of your random hobbies?
Oh, my God. I love music. Music is my sanctuary. It's my life. I grew up in a very musical household. I have a big record collection. I play a bunch of instruments, not very well. I secretly sing and love to sing, but I usually don't share that out loud with people. Music is my everything. It keeps me going.
Yeah, pre-call, I was talking to you about my interview with Torrin Frost, the rapper who did the Herbalist Hour intro song, and he said a very similar thing. He said music is his medicine, and I love that. I loved your perspective and his perspective on that. It kind of made me think of it in a new way. All right, well, let's do a rapid fire round. You could give as long or short as answers as you like.
Okay.
So speaking of music, who is one of your favorite singers or bands of all time?
Oh God, Stevie Wonder, Fela Kuti, Erykah Badu, Vaughn Benjamin from Midnight. Those are the tops right off the bat.
You love music because I said who is one, and you gave me like four.
Oh God, I know. There's no way I could say
it's hard to choose. Exactly.
Stevie Wonder, but there's too
That's
many.
so neat. I love it. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh God, I'm an introvert out in groups and an extrovert one-on-one.
Oh yeah, I'd say I'm definitely very similar in that regard. If I were to say, what's your spirit animal? What would you say?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I think that honestly my human body is the spirit animal because I know I'm like more than the human body. I mean there are animals that I deal with too, but I don't want to talk about that. But no, I think
Respect.
it's like this is my freaking animal, you know, and I'm finally learning that. Like I feel like herbs have taught me how to be a human in a body. So I'm going to say this thing right here.
That is such a good answer. It's such an answer from an experienced psychonaut too. So
Oh God,
I love that. Do you have a favorite movie genre?
I don't watch a lot of movies. Oh God, I actually don't know a lot of, I could talk about music all day, but I don't know a lot of movies. Do I have a favorite genre? I don't know. I like Star Trek though.
Okay. That counts. You're a Trekkie.
A little bit.
Only a few more. Do you have any nicknames? I guess Ash is kind of a nickname.
I guess I have a few. God, do I want to say any of them out loud? Well, there was a point where when I was feeling kind of like many years ago and I was not super happy that I started going by the name Otter just because when I think of otters they make me really happy. Yeah. But no, not really. My sisters and I make up funny names for each other, but it's usually a different one every day. Yeah.
Speaking of spirit animals, I was told mine one time I was told otter was my spirit animal. So yeah, they're lovely beings. All right, last one. Is there a plant that you're currently enamored with?
Oh, Lord of mercy. This is always the hardest thing to ask a plant lover.
Yeah.
Okay, is currently enamored with. Well, I see I'm overthinking it. I'm overthinking it. Currently no, see, I thought of 20 at once. Let's see, what do I have on my table right here? Well, I love Osha root with all of my heart, but it's also something that I feel really sensitive about. Like I don't want to overuse it. So one drop here and there to taste it.
Totally. All right, we'll go with Osha root.
We'll go with Osha.
Yeah, and you, dear listener, as well, please use responsibly. So
please.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Did you have any closing thoughts before we get out of here, Ash?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm really thankful for this opportunity to share and be seen and chat it up with you.
That was
Closing
fun.
thoughts. It's a weird world and it's a weird time. So just be weird.
Amen.
Go for it. Just go for it, everybody. Why
Embrace
not?
your weirdness.
At this point, just go for it. Do your thing.
Yeah. I love that. Well, it was really nice to get to know you a little bit more and, learn about your product line, your candies, and all about the plants growing around you. I want to say off memory, your website's blacksagebotanicals.bigcartel.com.
Yeah, and blacksagebotanicals.org should be a good shortcut too.
Oh, okay. It'll just take you right there. Okay, good.
It better. That's how it's programmed to go.
Well, dear listener, if you enjoyed the show, please check out Ash's Instagram, her store, and maybe even purchase some candy from her. It sounds like it sells out all the time. So I love it. It was great to get to know you more, Ash. Let's have you on for a round 2 because I still got even more questions for you. So someday in the future we'll jump back on an episode. And yeah, thanks to y'all for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving text, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.